F9's in startup.
So there we heard the call out. F9 is in startup, meaning that the flight computers have taken control of the launch countdown for Falcon 9. First and second stages are beginning to pressurize for launch. The white clouds that you see there is just...
LD is go for launch.
There we heard the final call. LD is go for launch. Everything looking good for an on-time liftoff today. Let's listen in on the final seconds of the countdown.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, and we have liftoff.
Stage 1 propulsion nominal.
Vehicle's pitching downrange.
We're now 30 seconds into flight, and Falcon 9 is preparing to pass through max Q, which will happen at T plus 1 minute and 12 seconds. For those of you that might be unfamiliar with this term, max Q is when the vehicle will experience the greatest amount of dynamic pressure. Call out there that everything is looking nominal for first stage. To prepare for max Q, we throttle the engines down and then back up about 20 seconds later. And this helps ensure that we keep those dynamic pressures below a certain level.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
So there we heard the call out that the vehicle is now going faster than the speed of sound.
Vehicle is experiencing maximum dynamic pressure.
So there we heard the call out that the vehicle is passing through max Q. Again, that's the moment in which the vehicle experiences the greatest amount of dynamic pressure, greatest amount that it'll see throughout flight. Now in just a few seconds, we'll hear the call out that MVAC chill has begun. Just like we did on the M1D engines for first stage, we open the pre-valves between the propellant tanks and the turbopumps, allow some of that super chilled liquid oxygen to cool down the turbopump hardware. There we go, so MVAC chill has begun. So that super chilled liquid oxygen is flowing through the turbopumps, allowing them to cool off prior to full flow of propellant. Everything is looking good with stage 1 trajectory. Coming up, we're going to have 3 events happening in quick succession. We're going to have main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation and SES1, or second engine start 1. Main engine cutoff coming up in 3 seconds.
And MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
All right, there on your screen we have confirmation of stage separation as well as MVAC ignition.
Good MVAC ignition.
Great view there of planet Earth rotating behind the first stage, which is on the left-hand side of your screen, and the second stage on the right-hand side. So on the left-hand side, we can see those grid fins beginning to deploy into the landing position. Those grid fins will be utilized to help steer Falcon 9 for a precise landing on our drone ship, which, like I mentioned earlier, is positioned a couple hundred miles.
Nominal trajectory.
Nominal trajectory there for Falcon 9. As I said, those grid fins will be utilized to help guide and steer the booster back to the drone ship.
Bearing separation confirmed.
And confirmation that there you saw it on your screen, the 2 fairing halves have separated, exposing the SXM-7 satellite. If you look closely, you can actually see the fairing disappearing from view in the background there. Currently at T plus 4 minutes and 3 seconds into flight, and we're performing the first of 2 planned MVAC burns. At stage separation, the first stage's velocity is about 2,200 meters per second, or 5,000 meters per hour. Pretty fast. Once the first and second stages separate, that first stage is actually still moving at such a high velocity that it continues to raise its altitude as it coasts for a couple of minutes prior to starting its downward return back to Earth.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
The next major milestone that we'll be able to see will be that first stage entry burn. For the entry burn, we relight the center engine, which we call E9, and then partway through the transition back through the Earth's atmosphere, we relight 2 more Merlin M1D engines, E1 and E5, to give us a total of 3 M1Ds, helping to slow the vehicle down as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. We're expecting that entry burn to begin in about 1 minute. Trajectory continues to look good there on second stage, carrying the SXM-7 satellite for Sirius XM.
Vehicle is on a nominal trajectory.
Gorgeous views of first stage as it has now reoriented itself, coasting through apogee and now returning back down. As I mentioned, we will be performing 2 maneuvers for that landing. First, entry burn coming up in about 10 seconds, followed of course by the landing burn on the drone ship.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
First stage is currently about 50 miles above the Earth's surface.
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
There we can see that the entry burn has begun on the left-hand side of your screen for that first stage re-entry. Again, we start by igniting the center engine first and then reignite 2 more engines to give us a total of 3 engines, allowing us to slow the vehicle down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere.
Entry burn, shut down.
And shut down of those 3 engines for entry burn. Trajectory continues to look nominal there for second stage on the right-hand side of your screen. I love that view of the MVAC nozzle glowing orange with Earth behind it. Next up, we have a couple of major milestones happening back to back. The start of the landing burn followed immediately by SECO 1, or second engine cutoff 1, on the second stage. SECO is where we shut down that MVAC engine to allow the second stage to coast for a little bit. This event preserves the fuel until we need it for the final burn to take us to our targeted orbit for the SXM-7 satellite. And then about 25 seconds after SECO 1, we'll hopefully have a live view of the first stage touching down.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Touching down on our drone ship, just read the instructions. So we're expecting the landing burn to begin in about 10 seconds and SECO to begin in about 15 seconds.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Everything continued to looking nominal. And there we heard the call out of SECO. And tuning in for that landing on the left-hand side. Hopefully we stick it. Looks like we lost the feed there. We'll try to bring that back to you whenever we have the opportunity. But we did hear the call out that we have good orbit for the second stage. So nominal orbital insertion.
Stage 1 is landed. Landing operators proceed into 11.100 on recovery 1.
We did hear the call out there that the first stage has landed. Unfortunately, we weren't able to bring the video of that as it was over the horizon. And there's that view. Once again, this is the 7th flight and therefore the 7th landing of this particular booster, also marking the 69th successful recovery of a Falcon 9 first stage. The second stage vehicle has just entered its first coast phase, which will last about 18 minutes, and will light that MVAC engine for a second time shortly thereafter at T plus 26 minutes and 3 seconds. We're going to take a break here, and as always, if you're interested in keeping an eye on that second stage throughout its coast phase, we'll leave you with an animation. See you back here at T plus 25 minutes.
Expected loss of signal, Bermuda. Position of signal given.
Welcome back to our webcast for the SiriusXM SXM-7 mission. To recap what's happened so far this afternoon, we had a smooth liftoff at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. 2.5 minutes later, our first and second stages successfully separated. The first stage, which made its 7th flight today, landed on our drone ship. Just read the instructions. And the second stage completed its first burn, successfully inserting the SXM-7 and second stage into its planned parking orbit. Right now, we're coming up on the second burn of the upper stage engine here in just a couple of minutes. Currently, the flight computer is commanding the settling thrusters to turn on and off, releasing nitrogen gas that helps lightly push the stage, allowing propellant to stay at the bottom of the tank above the engine, right where we need it. We're expecting that second engine start 2 to occur in a couple of seconds. And there we can see that MVAC engine has ignited and the nozzle beginning to turn a lovely orange. At this point in time, the second stage will burn for about 45 seconds, adding over 2,000 meters per second to the second stage's speed before shutting it down for a second time. That shutdown event is called SECO 2, or Second Engine Cutoff Number 2. This burn places the SXM satellite into the required orbit prior to separating it from Falcon 9. And we had confirmation that we have a good burn.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And nominal orbit for that second stage. As a reminder for those tuning in, the SXM-7 satellite is still attached to the Falcon 9 second stage. That second stage is now going to start a slow spin, which will help stabilize the SXM-7 satellite when it's released. This transition will take about 5 minutes, with satellite separation at approximately T+31 minutes and 38 seconds. While we'll wait for the satellite to get closer to its final destination, we'll pause commentary for now during this quick coast phase, but we'll come back in just before separation takes place in about 3 minutes. So we'll be back here at T+30 minutes. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our coverage of the SXM-7 mission for SiriusXM. If you're just joining us, we had an on-time launch at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by a successful ascent, stage separation, first stage landing, and 2 second stage engine burns. We have just one more major milestone coming up today, which of course is the deployment of the SXM-7 satellite from the Falcon 9 second stage, which you see there on your screen now. That separation is scheduled to take place about a minute from now. The satellite that we're carrying on board today, the SXM-7, is SiriusXM's next generation high-power broadcasting satellite.
Acquisition of signal HPK.
It was designed to provide service for more than 15 years, and it'll be joining SiriusXM's active fleet to provide audio entertainment and data services to the continental United States, Canada, Puerto Rico, and the Caribbean. It'll be outputting over 8,000 watts of content, meaning it will deliver the highest power density of any commercial satellite on orbit. And it's intended to replace the SXM-3 satellite that is currently on orbit. About 20 seconds away from that payload deployment. There on your screen, we have a great shot of the SXM-7 satellite.
Payload separation confirmed.
And there on your screen, we can see that the payload has separated. We've received confirmation of that successful separation of the SXM-7 satellite from our second stage, which will be bringing our webcast today to a close. Thank you to SiriusXM for entrusting us with the SXM-7 satellite. This mission marked the 7th launch and landing for this particular Falcon 9 booster, SpaceX's 69th successful booster.